the unlikely bromance of Donald Trump, who was, at the end of the day, a Republican, a right-winger, a protectionist, versus a sort of slightly liberal lefty lawyer, Mr. Rules, versus, Mr. No Rules. It was always unlikely, an unlikely bromance, and I think they've reached a sort of stretching point, really. And as we know from the days of Theresa May, even Boris Johnson, when President Trump wants to say what he thinks, he's not going to stop it.
Donald Trump has told The Sun that Sir Keir Starmer is pandering to Muslim voters, and the UK has moved down the pecking order of his allies. The president was speaking to Harry Cole. He's The Sun's editor-at-large, based in Washington, D.C., and he joins us on the line now. Good morning, Harry.
Morning. Well, very early in the morning here in Washington, but it's been a lively evening.
Well, I can imagine. Can we start off with just talking about Donald Trump's state of mind? How did he seem to you? Was he cheery? Was he a bit depressed? Was he tired? How did he sound?
I mean, I spoke to him about 10 o'clock last night, after another long day, day 4 of a war. So he was, he sounded pretty, it was a long day. I wouldn't say he sounded tired, but he was in fine fettle. He was very confident that what he's doing is right and it's going well, and that despite the casualties, he remained dominant in the air. I wanted to speak to him mostly about the sort of developments from Keir Starmer's response in the House of Commons yesterday to the president. And I have to say, I mentioned his name and he kind of just went. He just went for him. It's quite astonishing. He is not a happy bunny. He lavished praise in a way that I have never heard him do on the French, on the Germans, on NATO, all saying they're doing a great job, they're with us, but I just can't work out why Keir, he's being so different. And he said it's sad. It's a very sad situation. He said he never thought he'd live to see the day that Britain wouldn't be by America's side. And needless to say, he's not happy about it.
Yeah, I was really, really struck by how complimentary he was about the French. And he says in your chat with him, there's just something different about Keir Starmer in that he's a different kind of leader for the UK. And you really get the sense that he does feel there's been a fracture in the special relationship.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of Keir Starmer's biggest selling points, I think, that he made, he's had a rough old, we don't need to tell you guys, he's had a rough old time of it since taking over. But one of the things that his allies and his supporters in Downing Street pointed to is, well, he's done this great thing as a sort of Trump whisperer. He's walked that tightrope, that bridge between Europe and the United States. He had a successful state visit when Trump came over. He had lots of inward investments, but that started to fracture. And the unlikely bromance of Donald Trump, who was, at the end of the day, a Republican, a right-winger, a protectionist, versus a sort of slightly liberal lefty lawyer, Mr. Rules, versus Mr. No Rules. It was always unlikely, an unlikely bromance, and I think they've reached a sort of stretching point, really. And as we know from the days of Theresa May, even Boris Johnson, when President Trump wants to say what he thinks, he's not going to stop it. And I think you can point to the Chagos Islands deal as the key moment in the fracture. He used a wonderful turn of phrase. He said, it's woke island. I don't know why he's doing that. I don't understand. Why is he wanting to lease this? What is he doing? And it's the deal maker can't get his head around quite how bad that deal is. And obviously the government have said that the deal can't go ahead without America's support. And the commander-in-chief of America is saying, this ain't going to happen. And
he also raised the question of immigration into the UK. He talks about, the UK is an unrecognisable country, and this question about what happened in the Gorton and Denton by-election.
Well, I spoke to him about that. We were talking about his advice for Keir Starmer. He was trying to get his head around what it was that has changed in Britain with the special relationship. And he points to mass migration. Obviously, he did his usual drive-by on Stig, a terrible mayor. But I said, what's your advice for Keir? What would you be doing in this situation? And he said, you've got to stop letting in people into your country who hate you. Very clearly, he repeated that a number of times, and he raised this when we asked about it. He said, it could well be that he is pandering to Muslim voters, and he made very clear. He said, "I've been told that Keir Starmer has all these troubles, so perhaps he is, perhaps that's what he's doing." But he said that's suicidal for Britain, and he went on his usual rant about energy prices, but he was very, very vocal about immigration, mass immigration into Britain.
Can I ask you finally, Harry, we've been discussing this morning, there seems to be a bit of revisionism among very senior figures in the American administration about the motivations for this war. We heard from Marco Rubio basically saying that Israel dragged America into it, and if we hadn't done this, then troops in the region would have been put at risk. What's going on there? It seems like they are having to walk back their original proposals for what happened in Iran, and that suggesting Israel really were the leading force doesn't seem that helpful.
So Donald Trump, I think, is quite clear. Everyone's saying, set out your plan, set out your plan. The plan is he is happy to do business with a pliant leader, just like he's happy to do business with the leader of Venezuela, the new Venezuelan leader, who was part of the old regime, as long as they are open to doing business with America. And the terms I understand it to be on is no bomb ever, end of, no nukes, and end all the death to America stuff, and if you cut that stuff, there's a world in which America and a regime in Iran can coexist. I think they're trying to walk a sort of legal tightrope a little bit with Congress. They've got 90 days before they have to go to Congress to seek War Powers Act. They're wondering whether this is actually a war. There was some confusion early on about what Congress had been briefed exactly about the threat. So there is a little bit, you're right, to pick on that. There is a little bit of confusion, but I think it's pretty clear that regime change in the president's mind does not mean wholesale importing of a flag-waving, nice liberal democracy and everyone's lovely and happy and voting in voting booths. He's more than happy to do business with people who are, perhaps considered still quite hard line, as long as it's in America's interests.
Yeah, it's really interesting insight, Harry. Thank you so much. Great to have you on the programme after that chat with Donald Trump. Thank you.
Thanks.
That is The Sun's editor-at-large, based in Washington, D.C., Harry Cole, who's had a chat with Donald Trump just a couple of hours ago.
And this question for you to wrestle with, as Harry was saying, Keir Starmer has said his main foreign policy aim is sucking up to Trump. Is a row with Trump actually what Starmer wants, what we want Starmer to have when you look at the messiness of the war? Or does it actually give a lie to everything that's been taking place over the last 18 months? 033003 235. We're keeping an eye on what's going on in the Middle East. Of course, this morning, the IDF has just posted on X that IDF soldiers are operating now in southern Lebanon and are positioned at several points near the border area as part of an enhanced forward defence posture. We're conducting targeted strikes against Hezbollah terrorist infrastructure. Hezbollah chose to attack Israel on behalf of the Iranian regime, and it will bear the consequences of its actions. Israel is, of course, able to mount a multi-front war with Iran and with Iran's proxies in Lebanon at the same time.
It is 7:32 after 8 this morning. We'll hear from John Brennan, the former director of the CIA. He's got more on the idea that Israel was the motivating factor in going to war in Iran. And next, we'll ask how great Iran's military power really is. That's after the news with Andy Hayes.